Our third speaker, another University of Florida, the Gators. 3 speakers over the past 2 days have been Gators. Victoria Pagán, who is a professor of classics and is newly added to our steering committee for, she has joined the mentorship team. So very excited to have her on board as part of the Women's Classical Caucus. And she's going to be talking to us about the research statement. And I hadn't seen the subtitle, but the art of brinksmanship. How exciting. So take it away, Victoria.
Thank you very much. It's a real honor to be a part of this whole series. I encourage people watching the videos to take all of these parts because they really articulate very well. It's a really well designed series, and all of the different pieces work together. Before I start talking though, I just want to say that each person on this call and anybody who's listening to the recording who conducts research, right, deserves my respect and our respect. All of our research deserves respect, and should treat this privilege of conducting research with respect. And that's how I'm coming at this. So it's in that spirit that I'm going to offer 3 points, and I'm going to sound kind of teacherly and prescriptive and finger wagging. It's really coming from a place of very deep respect for the innovative research that people on this call are doing. You're all, pretty sure you're all younger than me, and you're making incredible strides in the field and in the profession with your research. And so if I sound finger waggy, I do want you to know that I'm coming at it from a position of respect for your work so that it is presented in the best possible way. So when you're writing your statement, I understood this to be part of maybe your cover letter, but if they're asking for a separate statement, then hopefully these ideas will help you there too. So you want to be specific, but not too specific, right? You want to be general so you can hit that audience, but not too general. And you do want to be clever, but don't be too clever. So it really is a matter of balance. When I'm reading letters of application and research statements, it's important to me, what I hear is how your research situates you vis-a-vis your colleagues. And what I mean is, are you writing this research statement from the position still of student, or are you writing it from the position of someone who imagines themselves as my potential colleague? I love my students, but I don't need any more. So when we're looking to hire somebody, we don't need another dissertator, right? We need a fellow colleague, a fellow researcher. So I have read letters where the letter uses the word dissertation 3 times on the first page. And I'm thinking, that's great, but I don't need a dissertator. I'll get to this. Then there's the letter that describes the arch of a sustained research agenda. So as you're describing your research, yes, we do understand our terminal degree is a PhD. You're going to write a dissertation, but can you frame it as not the last thing you'll ever write, but the first thing in a long career that will bear fruit over time? I know that seems hard to do, but it can come out in certain rhetorical ways that you frame the letter. So here's a couple of examples from doctoral candidates. So if you don't yet have your degree, you might say, I'm a doctoral candidate at Pearl Harbor University, where I will defend my dissertation on catchy title and give us the exact date. And that gives a lot of confidence that, yes, I'm a doctoral candidate right now, but I've got plans and I've got a date and I've got a plan to get this thing done. There's also an example, I'm a doctoral candidate and I will complete the degree requirements. This one is less specific. I'm not a fan of the month. I mean, February is 28 days and the first is a lot different from the 28th. And then the person goes on to say, since my interests and expertise converged with the specifications you've listed, I would look forward to the opportunity of making a strong contribution to your department in all ways. That really kind of tells me nothing, you know? How exactly do your interests converge? And this is part of what Jennifer was talking about yesterday. And of course, we'd all look forward to making that contribution. So dial it in and be specific. Now, if you've recently earned the PhD, here's a couple of examples of ways of framing this. I'm a broadly trained classicist with a special interest, as well as an additional background in X, Y, or Z studies. My PhD thesis, and here's where it starts with the PhD thesis and drops some names and discusses somewhat boring title, and then says, I will defend in March, which again, it's, is it, have you, you're a broadly trained classicist or have you defended? So the person didn't quite read through this. But then they go on to talk about the things that they actually have published. Another way of starting this is to just say my publications in the area of X, Y, and Z have focused on this, or my book project considers the problem of X, Y, and Z. And so when we move into language like this, my publications or my book project, we're starting to see this person less as a student and more as a researcher. Here's a nice example of someone who can summarize the importance of their research and state exactly what that book is going to argue. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is this positionality. Do you want to set yourself out there that you're still a student? Which, yes, you can still be a student, but if you tell us when that phase of your life will come to a close, and then you will emerge into the field, into the profession as a researcher, that I think can be more effective. Another recently minted PhD says, I'm currently engaged in this, in which I argue that. And then, revising the dissertation as a monograph is what we do. So again, it just feels, kind of fluffy or not, like not telling me much. If we could get to what those things are. I am a fan of seeing how two articles that arise from this research, and we can even get rid of the word thesis here, right? So this sentence, the first is and the second is, this business here will show that sustained arch over time. Yes, I did my homework and wrote a dissertation, and I was a student, but I'm emerging as a scholar, and from that work that I did, I now have some things that are going to come forward. I would avoid this one altogether. And then this one is interesting. This one was sort of a combination of elements. My dissertation is an investigation of, and then the research from my dissertation, so there is that word again, but prompted me to begin sharing my work. So I presented a paper that was well received and became published. So I feel like this example would really be awesome if we could just ditch or at least say dissertation only one time, but we don't need to hear it twice in the same paragraph. It is very useful to, in your letter or in your statement, depending on how it plays out, to issue invitations, right? To say, as a matter of fact, I'll be presenting at the SCS in this particular panel. That's actually really helpful because members of the search committee who are attending the conference, who are interested in your work, and even if you don't get the job, there might be somebody who comes and listens to your talk and is really interested, and you can gain a colleague that way. So I do encourage this kind of invitation to hear your work being presented. Okay, part 2 then is to refer to your research in ways that respect the blind peer review process. And this is coming from a place of love, okay? But I have served as a blind peer reviewer, and I have also, I'm currently one of the sub-editors for the American Journal of Philology. And if you put on your CV or in your research statement a very specific title, and even goes so far as to say it's under review with these two journals, you've now made it very difficult for the blind peer reviewers for these journals to maintain that anonymity. So you can say you've got a monograph title in progress, that's great. You've got a chapter coming in a Brill Companion, that's great. But if you give a very specific article title that's under review, it makes it very difficult for the editors to find somebody who hasn't somehow been exposed to this very specific searchable article title. I'm happy to answer more questions about this in the Q&A. There was a second example where someone had listed four really, and I'm thrilled that this person was that productive and that energetic, and that's good, but it would really be great, and I think it would signal to your audience that you understand that this is supposed to be a blind peer review process if you can phrase it in such a way that it can continue to remain anonymous until it goes through the whole process. So in no uncertain terms, please don't say you've submitted it to what and such journal and it's under review right now, because then we've just lost the ability to solicit readers for your work. Okay, when you're talking about your research, and I think this would probably fit with all the statements, reduce the frame, avoid indefensible superlatives, and just get rid of the adverbs, right? So I actually probably in my lifetime actually wrote this sentence, and I know because it typed out so easily. I'm sure I wrote this sentence back in the late 90s, right? My dissertation is a thoroughgoing investigation of the most memorable episodes in Tacitus's annals, and you wonder why why my life ended up the way it did, right? For too much frame. Here's an adverb nobody needs. Here's a superlative, and you just learned nothing about me, right? Now, this one gets a little bit better. In my dissertation, I examine how. It's a lot of setup to tell me that you're actually studying Prosopopeia in Euripides. That's my 10-minute mark. So I'm real good here. So I feel like this is too much frame. We could get rid of that and just get into the meat of your research. Of all the techniques employed by the orators, procatalepsis is the most. And as soon as you say that, everybody who studies Attic orators is going to be, no, sir, mine's the most important. So just don't do superlatives. And honestly, the research statements that are the first or the only, just no, sorry, just don't do it. So I hope this is helpful. And since the timer went off, I'll just leave it at that and be happy to answer questions. Thank you.